You have candidates who are interviewing for these types of roles, and obviously we touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of the sort of expectation and stuff, but what sort of questions would you suggest they ask then to make sure that they end up in a good job like you, or they don't end up in a job where it's not going to work out for them?
Yeah, so like we kind of walked through some of these already, but I will say that like I would start from the company financials really. So like I said, revenue, number of paying customers, growth rate month over month, whether or not those numbers are in line with their growth targets. Because if they're not, then why is that? How much runway do you have in years or months? What are your plans for raising funds, or are you bootstrapping? And like understanding like the business logic, first of all. But then if you kind of go through all of those questions and understand like, oh, and churn also, like, are the customers that you're able to close, are they actually staying? That's super important too. But if there are no red flags with any of those numbers, I'd move on to kind of like, okay, who are the ideal customers? Why did we define it as we did? Have we defined it, first of all? Because if not, then as a marketing person, that would be where you'd have to start. And then just the general go-to-market plan. So who are we selling to? Have we validated that there is actually a market for this product in the first place? How are we going to sell the product? So self-serve, sales-assisted, something in between, a combo. What are the, acquisition plays? Like, have we thought about running a self-serve trial, or is this all like, based on demos or like discovery calls, or like what's the sales process? And what's marketing's role in like supporting that? What's kind of even geographic markets they're thinking about? What do they see as the biggest opportunities in terms of marketing channels? I think all of these questions go to finding whether you're a good fit for the company. Because like I said, like you could be an amazing marketer, but it's still might not be the right company for you. And obviously some people, like, you don't have to have experience about everything, but you just have to understand the realities of what you will be doing, because you will be sorely disappointed if you start in a company that's operating in a totally different way than you would have imagined for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, you often find the sort of job descriptions for these roles are, it's a shopping list. Let's think of as many things as we possibly can that we're going to do at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we'll just cram it down just so that somebody knows that they might be doing that in the future. It doesn't really talk about, okay, what are the priorities in the first sort of 3, 6, 9 months?
Exactly. And sometimes founders don't know those, and that's okay too. But I feel like that's when they need to be like, okay, we're hiring someone who knows this stuff for a reason. So we're not going to be prescriptive about these are the channels, but we're going to be like, what would you do?
Yeah, and would you test that? I mean, you talk about there actually. Would you test? Okay, how willing are you going to be to let me experiment?
For sure, yeah. I think sometimes, like in an interview situation, people are far too eager to please, and that just like say anything that like makes them look good, especially if you're obviously desperate to get a job, any job. But I think if you want to stick it out and stay there long term, you need to understand like, okay, how senior of a person are they actually looking at in terms of, will they let me have an impact on these things? Like, for example, when I joined Swarmia, we didn't have a pricing page. We had a plan of creating one, and I knew it. And I was kind of like, I was in a position where I could still influence the content on it and everything, and like the way we package our plans, which was lucky. But had the CEO been like, oh, we don't want to put our pricing to the internet, that's a red flag for me. Like, I've worked with enough CEOs who say that, who are very secretive about what they're selling and kind of like, sketchy pricing, like each customer gets their own price, like almost experimenting too much.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there are SaaS best practices that exist for a reason. And you like in 2022, you have to have really serious grounds for not putting your pricing on the website.
I would totally agree. Totally.
So you just have to like kind of gauge how like strong of an opinion they have on different things, and whether or not, if you disagree, how the decision is going to be made between the two of you. And then like, I think that's fine. As long as like the marketing manager or whatever, director, whatever role you come into, as long as you don't feel like you're constantly having to like, you know, let go of your ideals and best practices and things that you know for a fact will work. I think that's important because nobody wants to work in a company where they can't have an impact.
No, indeed.